Welcome everyone to Innovate UCLA's virtual event number one. We at Innovate are a member-led organization with major companies and members from SoCal and beyond as members. We welcome you if you're a member. We welcome you if you're a guest. And if you're interested in being a member, please look us up at innovateucla.org or send us messages. We'll be happy to entertain you into what the membership means. Innovate UCLA is about innovation, education, and community. It's a historical organization, been around for over 40 years, but it keeps current with the times, as our discussion today will indicate. Most of our members have full company membership. So our executive chair this year is Thomas Phelps from Laserfish. He has invited 22 of his colleagues at Laserfish to join in today. And that's a wonderful thing. And we invite more people to do that. Make sure you get your companies and get your employees and things of that nature to join in. And our events especially our virtual events are open like this, and we can accommodate more people. We also have in-person events, and you'll see more about that if you want to know about our events, and we'll talk about it at the end. But more of our events are on innovateucla.org, so please go forward to look at that. With that, it's my pleasure to introduce Julia Erdkamp from Slalom, one of our member companies we're very proud to have. And but before that, we do have a video. And so, Pablo, if you want to go to the next slide and show video from one of our previous big events.
True transformation happens when you become the kind of a leader that invites people in to co-create and go higher together. And this idea begins to raise all of the boats.
Our mission is to inspire business innovation and research partnerships with emerging technologies.
What's really remarkable about Innovate at UCLA is the variety of programs we have. We have in-person events, virtual events, and the content that we're able to put together, it's really good.
We focus also on a subcommittee that's Women in Technology, which is my passion. We're very active in the community on attracting and retaining women in tech.
I really do feel like it's an extension of myself. It's a way to connect, express, and share, and have others share with me as well.
We have some amazing companies who are part of our membership, recognizable brands like Lionsgate Entertainment, NASA, Jet Propulsion Laboratory, Fox, and many, many others.
My favorite part are the members and getting to know people from all these different organizations. These are long-lasting relationships and really friendship.
And that's part of why we're here, right? That's part of why Innovate at UCLA is created.
We invite you to join us to participate in our programs, to volunteer on our committees, and really to network and get to know each other. On behalf of Innovate at UCLA, we hope that you will join us.
And it is important to note that our major Executive Leadership Award Dinner will be happening this September 28th. So please stay tuned for that and please join us. One other thing I want to emphasize is our member companies get to benefit not only from knowing each other and working with each other, but also we have the advantage of UCLA, the faculty, students, and the content we can achieve through a major university. So with that said, it is my pleasure to introduce Julia Erdkamp, who is a director at Slalom Consulting. And Julia, you'll introduce our panelists, our panel, and to get started with our presentation today. And thank you very much for everyone being here.
Thank you, Jim. Hello, everyone. As Jim said, I'm Julia Erdkamp. I'm a director at Slalom. I'm really excited about this conversation here today. Today, we're going to be talking to Nadya Ichinomiya, the VP of Agile Transformation at a small boutique entertainment firm that some of you may have heard of, Sony Pictures Entertainment. I'm really looking forward to this conversation that we'll be having and hearing Nadya share some of the insights that I've already been fortunate to hear in terms of their journey at Sony. But before we start, a few key housekeeping items. First, if you have questions at any time that come to mind, please drop those into the chat. We'll do our best to answer those questions as time allows at the end, and we have given plenty of time for that at the end. And then please make sure, I know we're at lunchtime, so make sure you mute your mics so that we can focus on the presentation. And with that, I'll turn it over to you, Nadya.
Okay, thank you so much, UCLA and Julia and Jim and everyone who's put this together. I'm so honored and thrilled to be invited to this and very excited about this presentation. And as Julia said, please get your questions ready because we'd like to make this as interactive as possible. So I'm going to share my screen. Okay. I think you should all be seeing that. So again, hello, Innovate at UCLA. And I'm really delighted to share our Agile Transformation journey with you. But before that, a little bit about that small entertainment company that you mentioned, Julia. So Sony Pictures lights up screens around the world with content like Spider-Man, Jumanji, Venom, and Ghostbusters, as well as TV shows like The Blacklist, Outlander, The Crown, and Cobra Kai. We have 9,000 employees, and we do about $10 billion in revenue. So this presentation is about the Agile way at Sony Pictures, but for those of you new to Agile, I thought it would be good to start off with a very, very quick set of definitions. So what is Agile? For at Sony Pictures, we view it as, first of all, a mindset and a set of practices that enable organizations to really harness continuous change. And all of us are working and living in that state of continuous change, and Agile really is the way that we've chosen to harness that change. So Agile is, first of all, like I mentioned, a mindset, and that mindset is described by 4 things we value. So interactions over process and tools, customer negotiation, responding to change, customer interaction over contract negotiation, responding to change versus following a plan, and working products over comprehensive documentation. Feel free to Google more about Agile. You'll find tons of it. We also have 12 principles, and I'd like to point out a couple of them. Number 5 is build projects around motivated individuals. And we'll talk about that when we get to the leadership part. And also number 11, which is the best architectures, requirements, and design emerge from self-organizing teams. So back to how we started at Sony. We started our journey in 2017. And when this topic first came up, we did have a few teams that started Agile in XP, which is one of the frameworks back in, I think it was 2011. But then it didn't really grow that much until our CFO, Philip, really came in and he came up with this book. He brought around this book called The Art of Doing Twice the Work in Half the Time, which raised a lot of eyebrows. And wow, that sounds like an amazing thing. So from that point, we had five areas that were piloted. And I was actually initially skeptical about Agile because I thought, Well, I think one of the things is we're all skeptical about things that we don't know much about. So I think normally all of us have a certain resistance to change because we've been kind of locked into how things have been done. And so I was like, how is this going to work? Right. So I was skeptical about it. But once I was part of the pilot and actually practicing it, even during the instructions and the classroom, I was still skeptical, but it wasn't until I actually dove into the first sprint of our Scrum team where I could really see the benefits. So yes, so I'm going to go to the next section, which is after we got to about 85 teams, we decided what was needed was to look at our leadership model. So it was July 2020 when we decided to, as we do most things, experiment with servant leadership. So servant leadership is also known as agile leadership. And it's really the handshake between the self-organizing teams that I mentioned and modern leadership. So in Sony Pictures, servant leadership is a mindset where leaders to serve their team first. And there's also a set of observable practices that transfer the psychological ownership to the people that have the information, and which unleashes more empowerment, passion, creativity, and performance from the team members.
Nadya, on that, I think servant leadership is a great driver. Was there a tipping point at Sony that made Sony adopt Agile? And was there something going on there in terms of the culture?
You know, I don't think it was any particular moment, except for, like I mentioned, we had a new CFO who I think has now been with the company for about 6 years. And he hadn't used Agile before, to my knowledge, but he was really electrified by the possibilities and the promise, not only from a project management standpoint, but Agile also encompasses a lot of the cultural change that's needed in order, you know, as I mentioned, the self-organizing teams, motivated individuals. So we're really thrilled and very lucky to have a CFO that embraces not only the financial aspects of the company, but also work-life sustainability and people being empowered. So those are all really in the whole area of Agile, because it's not just about projects and execution of that delivery. It's really the whole ecosystem of how employees show up for work, and are they motivated? Are they you know, how are they operating at work? Are they excited about the mission and the purpose of the company, etc.? Great question. So I've shown you right here the traditional hierarchical leadership pyramid. You're probably all very familiar with it. This was actually developed in the Industrial Revolution, and it worked really well when people were doing a lot of physical tasks like running, you know, the Ford Motor Company assembly line. So decisions were made from the top and communicated all the way down, and it worked really well because leaders basically thought through every thought, plan, action of those in the workplace settings. So that worked really well at that time. However, we are in a world that is very different from the Industrial Revolution. And one of the things is that our workers are not, you know, our employees are so different nowadays. They are mostly knowledge workers and rely on their creativity, their passion, and their initiative to get their job done. So it's very different. And most leaders these days can't understand everything that someone is doing because they might have done the job in the past, but probably things have changed. So the people with the information are really the right people to be empowered to do that. So this pyramid is what we look at to have the leaders serve the employees, the people with information, the ones that are closest to the consumers and the customers and stakeholders. So what this does is two kind of magical things. One is that it really unleashes the empowerment and passion of of employees, because why are you paying them? Why to come to work if you're just going to use them as like extensions of your arms? If you're just going to use them as robots that are being told what to do. So as a leader, this also has a nice benefit, is that it provides time for you to step back and focus on critical tasks, strategic thinking, and it really allows you to increase your strategic value proposition. So there's a lot of win-wins to that. So I've discussed a little bit about the benefits, the increased engagement, improved retention rates. And we found that people at Sony, for the most part, are very inspired by what they're doing, and that they get to in any area of their job, whether it's in finance, legal, information security, IT, they get to be a part of something that influences the pop culture of the world. So in every country, we have pretty much our products, most countries in the world. So because people are empowered, that type psychological ownership has been transferred to them. And when people own something, they take care of it. But when it's owned by someone else, people aren't connected to it. So the reason also is that this more, and it seems very appropriate to talk about this with the Innovate at UCLA organization, because this modern way of leading is also influenced by another couple factors. One is AI, machine learning, and robotics are eating away at rote mechanical tasks. So the job growth for humans is in areas where creativity, passion, and initiative are really the ones that are pulled forward. And that's only present in passionate, motivated, inspired employees. And also millennials have only known a world where there was user-generated content. They would watch what they want, when they want, and how they want. They can be an influencer or content creator on YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, etc. And they can order their burgers whatever way they want, whenever they want. So they don't want to be controlled at work. They have brains, and they want to be able to bring their purpose, their incredible sense of purpose and passion to the workplace. And it especially is relevant with pop culture as it is in Sony Pictures. So it makes a lot of sense to us. So that's why we've been implementing it. So I like to share a typical story about an employee who participated in our servant leadership program. So Darren Hopgood had hit the wall at work. He had a ton of transformation projects on his plate, and he couldn't get to all the people that he wanted to. And he had a liberating conversation with his boss, Bill, who said, Darren, it's okay to get some of this wrong. It doesn't have to be perfect. You've got to approach things differently. So Darren stepped away from a key project and handed it over to 3 employees on his team who welcomed the growth and development opportunity. And since these were stretch initiatives for everyone, including him, he had that similar liberating conversation with his employees that Bill had with him. And now he could step back and focus on strategy and making more of an impact. And this is an example of the benefits of the servant leadership, which all sounds great, but the program actually started off with a challenge. So many of you, and I'm going to ask Julia to put the link in the chat in a moment, to this David Marquet video. So he relates in this 10-minute video how he spent a year training to captain 1 nuclear submarine. And then there was a last-minute switch, and he was supposed to be captaining a vastly different, mechanically different one. He gave an impossible order, and his crew tried to implement it, even though it was physically impossible. And he realized that the traditional command and control way of leadership was not only not going to work, but it was potentially going to be disastrous and dangerous. So he called this new way of leading intent-based leadership. So this 10-minute video, which I definitely encourage you to view after this talk, is very inspiring. And our CFO, Philip Rowley, sent it out. and people loved it. And there was no behavior change. He sent it out again. People were inspired. And again, no behavior change. So this 10-minute video was part of a course I'd been leading since 2019. And the course had been getting great scores, but the behavior change and the stickiness of that was very little. So, and that's very normal, actually, because think about when you've taken a class and you get back to your desk and you've got this snowstorm and this avalanche of things coming at you, and it's very hard to actually make time to say, oh, how am I gonna implement this, right? So I gave this challenge some thought, and I thought, well, if you take a 2-hour class, it's a little bit like training for the gym in 2 hours and then expecting magic. Well, you actually have to show up consistently and do the practices, do those reps. And of course, it's hard at first, right? It's hard to get those muscles engaged, and your environment is not necessarily pulling for that. So the looming question was, how could we support people in operationalizing the training and having them help them through their everyday leadership challenges on the court? And we, of course, had to do this at scale because obviously I'm a one person. So I also gave some thought to what's called the learning pyramid. Some of you may be familiar with this. So you can see at the top, the knowledge retention rates of lecture, which is what the 2-hour class was essentially. And then there's reading. But when you really get to the lower parts of the pyramid, discussion group, practice by doing and teaching others, that's when the knowledge retention rates really pops. So I had to think about this a lot and think about how could I get the discussion group and practice by doing and teaching others to get going. So this led to what we call the Circles program. So there was one other thing, which is called the law of diffusion of innovation. So any kind of innovation, from the Segway, which obviously did not cross the chasm, to the e-scooter, which did. You can go through this scale, this curve of innovation, and there's always going to be people that are going to be the laggards. They may still be hanging on to a piece of technology or Windows 95 or something, right? But the people that you're going to really focus on is, what we call embrace the willing, right? So these are people that are really hungry for the innovation, and they're really hungry for that culture change. So that is the people that are the innovators and early adopters. So we needed them to unleash their passion and enthusiasm. So there's, I'm not going to put this one in the chat, but there's a video by Simon Sinek called "How to Make a Cultural Transformation." So that video also talks about this and how you really need to engage the people that are excited, and then they're the ones that are going to have people cross the chasm into their early majority, and then it becomes almost a FOMO kind of situation, because it's like, wow, that team is having a lot of success. They are, what are they doing over there? I want to know more. So the other thing that I kept in mind, I stumbled on this article from BBC.com called the 3.5% rule, because I was thinking about, well, where is that tipping point where things start popping? And the 3.5% rule states that nonviolent protests are twice as likely to succeed as armed conflicts. And I viewed that armed conflicts I always saw as more like, like something coming from on high saying, you must do this, the whole voluntold, and versus nonviolent protests where things can happen organically through grassroots. So 3.5% of a population is needed to create culture change. So 3.5% of 9,000 is 315 people. Okay, so I thought, okay, that is my stretch for amazing goal for the Circles program. And after the first 2 sessions of the 2-hour course in July, I asked the participants for survey, would they be interested in a follow-on program? And 30% said yes, which was 3 times as much as usually these programs get. So there was definitely a lot of organic enthusiasm for this. So what we do is in the circles programs is we group people together by diversity. And what I mean by that is we usually pair people up or in groups of 4 to 6, and we'll have people from different visions. So there might be someone from InfoSec, someone from facilities, someone from information security, legal, procurement, etc. And we also have people at different levels. So here's an example of one of the circles from our first cohort, and they usually meet between once or twice they meet once every week or once every 2 weeks for either 30 to 60 minutes. And it really depends on them. So the way we run servant leadership is through servant leadership. So again, mentioning principle number 5 and number 11, self-organizing teams, highly motivated individuals, etc. So one of the things that we focused on as we had 2 guiding principles was, when we were experimenting and creating this program, one of them was to make it available to all employees. So traditional leadership programs are kind of directed towards people at a certain level and above, or people that have positional authority. So because this was a culture change and not necessarily just the leadership program, we needed everyone to know what this was about, because if your leader suddenly changes their behavior and you don't know what the context is, it can be very confusing for people. So we wanted also to think about people that were individual contributors who we think are leaders, because they are part of they are all architects of our culture. So I felt very strongly that we needed to have it be very inclusive and not exclusive for that tidal wave of cultural change to happen. So the other guiding principle is we wanted to intentionally invite diverse perspectives, experiences, and levels. So one of the setups for the circles themselves was to dissolve silos. So I mentioned that people would be from different groups, and we wanted to have people at different levels. So there was someone that said, oh, people that are at high levels won't want to be with people that are lower levels because, what are they going to learn, right? And I thought, well, that's a very limited view, and no, no, I refuse. So we have people at all different levels, and it is so effective of doing that because the people at more senior levels definitely learn from the people that have just joined the company, have those fresh eyes, fresh perspectives. And as someone who has personally benefited so much from reverse mentorship, I wanted to make sure that was part of it. And it's really, we wanted to make sure that it was a lot of integrity around the program. So
let me pause you there, because I think that's a really important point. And the reverse mentorship is absolutely a key part of anyone's professional development. So as you're looking at those 2 principles, you want to be inclusive, but then you also want to be very intentional about designing the cohorts where there's this cross-pollination and diversity of thought. How did you balance being inclusive with intentionally designing a cohort with diverse perspectives?
Well, it was actually fairly easy because basically, when people sign up for the Circles program, we obviously know their title, their group, etc. And I've been with the company for 16 years, so I know a lot of the people already, especially in the early days. Like now the program's gotten bigger and bigger and actually has spread to other companies, so other Sony companies. So it's PlayStation and some of our acquisitions and mergers. So PureFlix, Sony, Crunchyroll, Funimation, the anime group, and like I mentioned, PlayStation. I actually do all the matchmaking myself because I'm looking at this spreadsheet that has department, level, etc., geography. So one of the things, just to make scheduling easier, we do have people by time zone so that people that are in the different places in Canada can be at the same time zone as the people in Culver City, for example, or New York, or People in London can be in the same time zone with people in France, and etc. And then same with Asia, and people from Australia and Singapore, etc. So that's how we design it, so that we have the different levels and people from different departments. So just take a bit of work doing it, but that's how we design it. And then when we set up the actual circles, we do say, listen, leave your titles at the door, and the person, there's usually a circle leader. It can be someone different for each of the missions. It can be the same person, but it doesn't have to be the most senior person. So that's some of the design principles.
Thank you.
All right, so our first cohort had 28 people, and with 7 circles with 4 people each. And so we'll send out an email with the mission, and the mission has the intention is to implement the mission with the people you work with, not your circle. So the circle is what I mentioned before: the practice by doing, the peer mentorship and coaching, and the teaching others. So the learning pyramid. It's also a safe space to vent and say, how did that experiment go? For example, one of the assignments is we call it the extreme question challenge, where you go into your next staff meeting and you cannot have anything come out of your mouth that isn't a question. All right, so that's sometimes very difficult. So your circle is a space where you can go. We have usually people set up a Teams chat so they can chat with their circle and say, oh my gosh, extreme failure on extreme question challenge, but I'm practicing, how's it been going, that kind of thing. So that's how we design the circles. We also are looking at having people really take ownership of this, and so we don't have anything that's required. So we don't have anything to turn in. We do have 2 readouts in between mission 3 and 4 usually, and then at the end. But all of that is very, like I said, it's not mandatory, and so people can flex their engagement up or down depending on their bandwidth, their interests, what's going on with projects, etc. Because there's always a lot of factors like movie release dates, month and year end close, project timelines, etc. So we've made the program very doable, and so like I mentioned, the people pick the leader of the circle, and then they essentially get going. And once they get a mission, they have a choice. Some people want to choose journaling on their own. Some of the assignments are about watching videos. So people sometimes watch them together, or they watch them alone and they talk through them. There might be experiments. So there's a lot of variety in what those missions actually are. So one of the things that came out of cohort 1 was the idea of a circle program, coaching program. So these people are highly motivated. They love the culture change. They've connected very passionately with the materials, and they're very passionate about the company and having this new way of working, being in growing in the company. So these are people that a lot of them have been there since cohort 1 in 2020. And a lot of them are not Agile coaches. Some have positional authority, some are individual contributors. And the individual contributors have found the role very beneficial, not only practicing their servant leadership, but demonstrating an ability to be a leader. And all of them have found the program really a great way to network with different people at all different levels and work with people that they don't normally work with. So the Circles program is an excellent networking opportunity, and has really, there's people that have finished the whole Circle program and they're still meeting once a month, or even when they've left the company for whatever reason, they're still meeting. So that safe space that people have developed with each other is pretty magical, and it allows for a lot of great relationships to be built over a very quick amount of time. So some metrics. So out of the 9,000 people that are with the company, 10,000, 9,000 people that are with the company, over 1,000 people have completed the 2-hour course, and over 600 people are in the 10-month circle program. So definitely we reached that tipping point of the 3.5% fairly quickly. And we have 11 cohorts that have we have a couple cohorts that are completing soon, and we're going to be spinning up cohort 12 in the next month. So that's how we run things. Here's a quote from Christiane Kaduka, who's out of our Miami office. And, she says that team members are more motivated, they feel more empowered, and productivity is increased. So I'm just going to pause for a moment and see if there's any questions before we move on to we language.
Yeah, we can ask some questions now. One of the questions, Nadya, that was asked is it possible to teach this information to a group from different companies? It seems, obviously you're talking about like Sony, but could you take this type of model and apply it across? And I guess that you kind of hinted to that in terms of across other Sony entities, but would love your thoughts on that.
Definitely. The thing here is, and this is why this has grown so quickly, is that everyone loves to be empowered and have more psychological ownership and autonomy about what they do. And it really that having this purpose and having this ability to have mastery really increases a lot of motivation, inspiration. And so that's nothing specific to Sony itself, right? So that's why it's really organically grown to go to Sony Interactive Entertainment, PlayStation, and PureFlix, and some of these other places, because I think a lot of leaders are finding, well, how do we motivate people in, as we come out of the pandemic, and there's this whole great resignation and the quiet quitting and all that stuff. So I think that it's definitely very transferable to other companies. And actually on Monday, I'm going to be leading a session for one of our vendors that's sponsored by our finance group. So we work with Capgemini a lot. And so we're going to be, working with them a little bit too, to bring servant leadership to them.
Yeah. So I guess to your point, yes, you can teach it to a group of different companies for sure, but just by virtue of Agile being around self-organized teams, they need to be organized around something in terms of how this plays out from a transformational perspective. The other question that I had was related to, how did you keep this positive? Because obviously change is very disruptive. And how did you keep it along those lines where you're pulling out however many people from the organization to do this work? It sounds like you did very small chunks of time and commitment, but were there any other key things that helped in that manner, in that way?
Yeah, so I think we were very upfront that we would ask about 2 hours a month of a commitment, and this was all on people's, like, there was no organized events, so to speak, that people had to dial into. We do have some big events that people can optionally go to, panels and fireside chats and that kind of things. But it was only 2 hours a month, which ends up being about 10 minutes a day. And 10 minutes a day to invest in your own development of your career didn't seem like a big showstopper for many people. The attrition from this program was very low. Usually because of a bandwidth or people leaving the company or maternity, paternity leaves and stuff. So it was something that well, we didn't know how fast and how viral it was going to go, but in a way it kind of made sense, because people definitely want that psychological ownership, and people want to be able to contribute. People want to make a difference and feel like their contribution matters and that they matter. Mm-hmm. This is what this is all this is foundational to servant leadership. Is you're not a cog in a machine. You are someone that makes a difference. You make and indelible contribution, and we want to unleash whatever your native genius is. We want to find it, discover it, and develop it, and then unleash that native genius within every person that comes into contact with this program.
Yeah. So you have two really important sections, the we and then the psychological safety. We have other questions, but I want to give you the time to cover those because those are very, very powerful, tenets that I think it will resonate with a lot of people. We'll reserve the rest of the questions till the end.
Sure. So this is really quick, and this is another video by David Marquet. If you can maybe put this one in the chat, and it's how we language changes everything. So this is a very 2-minute video on YouTube that you can find from David Marquet. And in most organizations, there's the concept of they. So if you go to a hotel and you check in, oh, you're not, the room's not ready, I'm sorry, because the housekeeping, they are not ready yet, right? So there's different departments, and those departments are always like thwarting what you're trying to do. And so so that's business as usual, right, in corporate companies. Now, David Marquet on his submarine with 134 people, they were saying this is a photo of a fire safety drill, and they weren't able to do this, they. So he actually forbid the word they. It's all we, and because it's not a bunch of separate teams, it's one team. And so we've kind of adopted that approach there's only we at SPE and there's no they in the SPE way. So this is a quick, video that I encourage you to watch because it really can transform the nature of collaboration. And then I'm going to dive into psychological safety because that's something that is also a subset program that we've had a lot of success with too. And psychological safety is based on the research by Amy Edmondson, and she says that psychological safety is a belief that one will not be punished or humiliated for 4 things: ideas, questions, concerns, and mistakes. And there won't be any kind of punishment or price you pay, right? So we thought that was a very important component of the Agile way of leading with self-organizing teams. And so we developed something called our safety check, which is an instrument we do. It only takes 30 minutes, which is great. And it creates, the intention is to create a safe space. And we do not want to create a kumbaya where everyone agrees, because that does not create the intellectual friction, the diversity of thought that is needed for innovation. Because you need to have people go, I like your idea, how can we do it and include this, right? So we want differences to be celebrated and passionate genius to be nurtured, and where joyful creativity can be unleashed to every level so innovation can flourish. So it's not about reducing conflict. It's actually about increasing conflict, but that there's no interpersonal price that you have to pay when you disagree with someone on your team or even your boss, right? So that's what we are very intentional about. And we have this safety check. And so the overview of the process, I'm going to dive into a little bit more detail, but essentially it's filtering. I feel more safe when, I feel less safe when, and actions we can take to improve team safety. And so the definition of filtering is something happens in your brain, you think, well, maybe I should bring up that idea, question, or concern, or mistake. And it's to what extent you express it in a meeting, in an email, however you want to express it. And so that can be measured. So what we do is we do the safety check, and we do it completely anonymous using non-Sony websites. There's no login, and people are able to rate things about the team space on everything is discussable without filtering, which is a level 5, to number 1, nothing is discussable without filtering. Level 3 is where things are acceptable, most discussable without filtering, right? So when we do this, we have we take a half an hour the boss is out of the room, is not there. And we ask these questions about filtering. So one-on-one with your boss, how much filtering do you do? Scale 1 to 5. Team only, boss is out of the room. How much filtering are you doing? 1 to 5. Team with the boss in the room, 1 to 5. And then with other teams, right? So that's more of a control. Usually that score unfortunately goes down, probably because of the they. So this will come up with a quantitative score. So, and then the next thing is to do these qualitative. So we use Easy Retro for this. Again, there's no sign in. People will write, I feel more safe when, and they'll put a sticky together. I feel more safe when, blah, 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 blah. I feel less safe when, and then actions we can take to improve team safety are. So that gives a lot of qualitative data. And then we have a half an hour debrief with the boss and just take them through the scores, ask them if there's anything that they're surprised by. But this gives them a real-time pulse check of how their team is feeling. Mm-hmm. And we've had a lot of success with this because of this reason. And that's meta safety. So
did you, Nadya, I love this concept and I love the way that you all did this exercise. Did you monitor trends, and are there any examples where the feedback resulted in tangible improvements at Sony?
Definitely. Well, we used to monitor all of the scores in the website. We don't do that too much anymore, but because essentially at the end of the day, each team is different. And so the aggregate number is not super helpful because new people come into a team, things happen. So it's difficult to measure as a big blob, but it is very, very personal for the team leader, right? So the team leader is usually a bit like, oh my gosh, but when they get that data, it's freeing, it's empowering, because they're not going to be able to get that information from people because, people don't want to attend people, et cetera, et cetera. But when you can get that data and go, okay, these people are not feeling safe not because I'm there, but because my boss's boss comes in and swoops in and kind of creates a lot of churn or confusion. Well, that's a good conversation to have with your boss's boss. Like, hey, when you do that, you probably think you're being helpful, but it's actually confusing people, and maybe there's some things you can do. So yes, there was a leader that I was working with, and we did a baseline, and then 3 or 6 months later, we did a recheck, and the numbers went up significantly, like 30% increases in just maybe 3 or 4 months. And I asked that leader, what changed? And that person said it was a servant leadership program, specifically the Multipliers book, which I'm going to show at the very end is the list of resources.
Great book.
Was doing that.
Okay.
So I've just got one slide left of the main content. So, and that is value prioritization. I know that we're running a little short on time, but so value prioritization, how do you prioritize value within teams and then across a portfolio was the challenge we started on. I think it was towards the end of last year. So we're in the pilot process now. We've gotten 2 teams in the finance area that have already, they're already, working with this. And let me tell you a little bit about what weighted shortest job first is. So what it is it comes from lean product development, and obviously it's to maximize economic benefit. So you look at cost of delay, COD, cost of delay, as components of business value, time factors, risk reduction, opportunity enablement, and then you divide that by the job size. So people do this within different systems, but we're starting out just using it as a spreadsheet. So you have some kind of work to do, and then you would rate it on maybe, we leave it up to the teams to decide how they want to do it, if they want to use Fibonacci numbers or just 1 through 5, and how much value, what is the risk reduction, et cetera. They come up with a score, and then they compare that to other bits of work, so user stories or epics or however. And it does optimize for the shortest job. So instead of things being, these massive bodies of work that are very hard to estimate, it is all about getting to the smallest job, the most doable, and the highest value. So like I said, we're in the pilot process, but it's generating a lot of interest in the company. And so we're expanding it in this next cycle of our OKRs. So questions?
Yeah, Nadia, there are a few questions around the Circle program specifically. And I think there was some needs for clarification around like the examples of really the Circle program itself, but then also, do you have a specific example of like how a Circle program like played out like in a specific implementation of that?
Yeah, sure. There were, first of all, there was a few executives that I spoke to. I'm not going to share this deck here, but essentially when we started working with the different circles, people were very excited about the benefits they were seeing and having that safe space and essentially getting a way to go through that content with people. It's like this automatic accountability circle. And so we actually got a lot, maybe 30 testimonials from executives and individual contributors that really love the program. And probably the thing that they like about it the most is the ability to take in content in bite-sized pieces that they can spread it out over, the whole program, which is 12 missions over every 3 weeks. There's a new mission sent out, and it's a 10-month program. So instead of taking these 2-hour classes or 4-hour classes and then it kind of fades in our memory, it's a way of spreading the learning out in where it's the people can just take that learning themselves. We have a website and they can just take what they want and whatever learning style they have. So I think the growth of it is really been word of mouth. We try to avoid people being told to do it. That happens occasionally, of course. And sometimes people are like, oh, I've been told to do this, but actually I love it. One of our circle coaches was like that. He was voluntold to do it, but he's loving it. So I hope that answers that question.
Yeah, I think it was more of, so what would that look like in a more tactical format, the Circle program? Like, for example, what does that mission look like for this month? They did this, and this is how they work through that. Do you have any?
For example, for the first 4 missions, we cover the David Marquet book, which I'll put up the screen on that. So this, for the Agile Alliance, is more for people that just want to know about Agile. Mm-hmm. But these 2 books are foundational to the servant leadership program. Mm-hmm. We start off actually with the Turn the Ship Around book, and we have 4 missions based on that. So David Marquet has these clarity, confidence, and control. And so there's a mission on each of those, and then kind of like a rounding out mission. And then the rest of the missions are on multipliers. And so, for example, an assignment will be, like, for example, I mentioned one from multipliers is go into your next staff meeting, trying to increase the ratio of questions to statements. And that would be an example of something that came from multipliers. Another one would be from Turn the Ship Around would be assess how you would transfer the control from yourself to people on your team, and do an exercise on what that would look like. And probably it wouldn't take 24 hours. It might take 3 to 4 months to do that, right? So those are some exercises. Native Genius is another one. So Christiane Paducah, who I mentioned earlier, She has 6 direct reports. And so for each of her direct reports, they did this native genius exercise where she would have a meeting with them and she would tell her direct report, these are what I think your native geniuses are, like your strengths, things that come easily to you. And they would do it to her too. They would also say, well, you know, you're a really great listener or whatever. So there's a lot of tactical assignments, videos to watch, things to discuss, and about how to operationalize this theory into practice so that you are changing the culture team by team.
All right. I know we're coming up on time. This has been fantastic. And Pablo did share, you're probably way more interested in Nadya's LinkedIn than you are mine, but I'm sure Nadya will avail herself to answer any additional questions on this program. I want to turn it back over to Jim to close us out. Jim, are you on?
Yes, I am.
All right. The floor is yours.
All right, thank you. And thank you, Nadya, Julia, you both did a great job. And what a wonderful presentation. I've got a lot of good information I'm going to use. So thank you. Thank you also for our attendees, our board. I noticed there were a lot more people from various companies on that are members, so I really appreciate that. And Nadya, you're always welcome back. We also appreciate Sony's membership with Innovate as well. So we have upcoming in-person event, and Pablo, you want to show me? So our summer solstice is going to be coming up in June, and we look for, that's a morning meeting at the UCLA Faculty Club. So those of you who are, looking for that morning commute, this is one to go to. But we promise it'll be very informative, a lot of fun, and we look forward to seeing you there. Again, thanks everyone for being here. And I look forward to seeing you at future events. And thank you all from Innovate at UCLA.
Bye.